Recently we've seen a lot of climate activism around the world. We know about all the problems related to climate change and how difficult it is to tackle this problem. However, there might be even a bigger problem that we do not know about, a problem in the form of international law. This problem is called bilateral investment treaties. There are treaties between the state and companies that state that the state needs to protect the investment. So what happens is that when a state tries to enforce a certain social or environmental policy, that these policies might harm the investment of a company.
Well, with investment treaties, they usually come coupled with settlement agreements for how to come to terms with when there's a dispute involving investment. But what happens is these disputes are usually settled by independent supranational organizations with a bunch of corporate lawyers deciding on these issues. And these issues mean that in many cases, if a state has a policy which the investors and these corporate judges could decide is damaging to investments, it could mean that that state has to pay massive damages and maybe even reverse the policy.
There are numerous cases of the environmental policies being challenged by BITs. An example of a case like that is Vattenfall 1 versus Germany in 2009. The Swedish company was building a coal-fired power plant in the region of Hamburg. The city then imposed quality controls for the wastewater released into the rivers. Then the company claimed that these newly imposed environmental standards harmed the investment and sued the city for 1.4 billion. Eventually, the city settled the case by lowering the environmental standards rather than paying the fine. A second example is that of TransCanada versus the United States of America in 2015. TransCanada was the company that was responsible for the Keystone XL project. This project faced much opposition due to worries about greenhouse gas emissions, oil spills, and indigenous rights. Due to these worries, Obama delayed this project. After that, TransCanada sued the government for $15 billion. Later, this was suspended after Trump gave the executive order to approve of the controversial project.
If a citizen wanted to change the system or do something to help the environment, there's only two ways. Well, the first option is just to get out and run. That would be to pressure governments not to sign these international trade agreements, not to get involved in any of these dispute settlement mechanisms, and basically just try and avoid the whole system altogether. Or the other is to try and get the case law to change by bringing more cases into these firms. If we perceive investment to not only be capital and assets, but actually to be the environment that we live in, that could mean that if a company pollutes the atmosphere or tears down the rainforest, that could be a damage to the investment of the people, and the people could sue that company. Just try and get that case law through, because there is groundwork for this to be happening, but there's just not enough of it going on right now as there needs to be. Currently, international investment law has caused massive damages to activists working to try and better the climate and better social justice. But this can also be a double-edged sword. Instead of having this as a tool for corporations, activists and the people and mass movements can use it to get back at corporations and claim that the land and the industry and everything that we have is owned by the people, and therefore these companies should not damage them. While this is all hypothetical at this point, the legal framework is there and ripe for the picking.
To sum up, currently bilateral investment treaties form yet another obstacle that makes the implementation of new climate policies on a national level even harder. The cases in which a company claims that their investment was damaged by a certain policy lack transparency and are associated with large costs and can leave governments with huge fines for trying to implement a new policy. And this issue is very much boiling underneath the surface, and it's important that it gets more attention, because not all is lost. Citizens can take the upper hand in this issue by pressuring the governments to not get involved in these kind of treaties, by restructuring case law to make sure that not money is protected, but the citizens.